Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is the In the 11 podcast. I'm your host, Brendan Griffiths, and this is the show we bring on those from the world of football to show you what it takes to be in the 11 at the highest possible level. This one is a really fun one that I think you're going to enjoy. Eddy Prugh is in the 11, and he has a really unique career. I mean, we talk about his ability to be the first ever professional player to come out of the state of Montana and carved a career for himself where he was met with a lot of adversity, a common theme that you will hear across all episodes of this podcast, but one that did not shy away from Eddy, and Eddy did not shy away from that adversity. And the thing that I thought was really cool about this episode and my conversation with Eddy as well is now, having retired from the game, he has chosen, kind of a completely new path to walk down and is trying something new and is pushing himself in other ventures, right? I know a lot of players go immediately into coaching, or they go immediately into personal training, or media, something like that. And not to say that any of those pursuits are not amazing, because they are. I do media right now through this podcast. I've also done lots of coaching as well. But I really think it's cool what Eddy's doing, and I really enjoyed him as a storyteller talking about his career and kind of reminiscing a little bit. So I will kick it over to myself and Eddy. I hope you guys enjoy this one, and here it is. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcoming into the 11 for today. Eddy is here. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for stepping into the 11 with us and sharing your story today.
Yeah, my pleasure, Brendan. It's always good to talk to a fellow, lover of football and just, guy that's been in a similar situation as me. So great to be here.
Yeah, it's funny. It's somewhat of a little fraternity, right? Of the dream chasers, I guess, so to speak, of people who do something that is as crazy or, as beautiful as what we make it out to be.
Yeah, 100%, man. It's funny because everyone thinks when you say yeah, I was a professional soccer player, like any professional athlete, they're always like, oh, big time money, but people don't realize there's an entire world of people out there in every sport. They're just trying to make a living and keep their dream alive, and down in the trenches where it's really happening. So yeah, it's a good ride. It was a really fun ride for sure.
Yeah, it's really unique, right? Because I think for the person that, doesn't actually have experience in professional athletics, the person who just watches it on TV, right? They watch the NBA or they watch the Premier League, they see it as this one thing. Yet the person who, like yourself or other players that you've come across in your career, they understand the full complexity of it, right? That there's guys that, are working other jobs while they're quote unquote professional players and, are just trying to scrape by a living. I do think it's part of the reason why I like sharing stories like this, just to give that other side of the coin, to let people know that, yeah, there are guys who are making, $100 a game to play in the middle of Slovakia, and it's just because they love it that much. And I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, exactly. You nailed it. And I mean, I guess the reward in the end is not the actual money you make, and any of us that have been on that path of just trying to find any opportunity for any money, they'll tell you that it's never, of course you dream about the money, you dream about the contract where you can buy some nice stuff and all that, but it's always going to be the journey that's the real valuable thing in the end, and the experience of finding a game in the middle of Slovakia that you can play in. That's going to be what sticks with you forever. So well said, for sure.
Yeah,
You know what it's about. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. And I ask, as a kid who grew up in Montana, was this something that you had kind of envisioned for yourself as a kid? I think we picture the kid that grows up in London, right? Or the kid that grows up in, Paris, maybe sees one day themselves being a professional footballer. Was that something that you had kind of foresaw for yourself?
Yeah, it's a good question because it's a random end result being from Montana. We've got like a lot of good football players, American football players. We got some hockey going on, skiing, outdoor sports like that. Really good skiers come from Montana, of all types. But soccer was never a big thing in Montana at all. It's grown, as the sport has grown in America. But when I was, a little kid playing, it was like really not a high level of competition. The season was really short, and for whatever reason, I just gravitated towards soccer over anything else. I skied, I played tennis, I played hockey, but for whatever reason, it was just soccer that always was my thing, and I just went and like I couldn't uh, I couldn't get enough of it when it became like accessible through YouTube and stuff like that. I mean, before that, I remember
Mm.
seeing like little clips of Premier League games on some random sports channel, like, like what, not ESPN ever, but like I would get like these tiny little like pieces of highlights and stuff from English soccer, and I'd be like, oh my gosh, what is that? That's so cool. Like, so then when
Yeah.
YouTube came along, it really just like blew my mind, and I was able to like see uh like with the players at the highest level. I started just like studying rosters of European teams. I don't know if there's anybody that has watched more YouTube than I have in terms of like soccer, just like highlight stuff. When I was in middle school and younger and growing up, it was just, oh my gosh, you couldn't keep me off of it. But and then there was also a huge turning point for me when my dad took my brother and I from Montana on a trip to England to watch a Premier League game when I was, I think, 12. And he took us to, at the time, the all being an American, or being from Montana at least, was like Manchester United is this big team. Like Beckham had just gone to Real
Mm.
Madrid, and that's what you knew was Manchester United. And so we happened to go to the Manchester Derby, which was Manchester City against Manchester United. And at the time, Manchester City were sitting in like 16th or something in the league, and they won that game 4-1, and it was just like the most amazing experience for me. And I've been a devout Manchester City fan ever since. Thank goodness. They're, one of the most incredible teams to watch in the world. And yeah, so that experience really opened my eyes to a lot more than just what I had seen in Montana. And my goals were
Mm.
set, and that was the dream since then. Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe can you talk to us a little bit about how you were able to, because it sounds like it came a lot from this inspiration that you had and then kind of your internal drive to make it somewhere with this sport, even though it wasn't necessarily, the environment around you didn't lead it to, you having a lot of success. One of the recent episodes I was doing with a player who plays in Iceland right now, his name's Kyle McClagan, and we were talking just about the differences between Europe and America, right? And funnily enough, I had kind of said in Europe, it seems like there's so much proximity to football always, right? Like he used the example of in Iceland, in Reykjavik, I think there's 8 professional teams just in that one city
Hmm.
alone, right? Where, you do look at a place like the United States, in certain areas, it's very densely populated. If you go to kind of like the New York City area or Philadelphia, right? Maybe there's going to be a lot of clubs there for you as a youth player. But I think I even did use the example of like Montana. Where's the closest, professional academy for a player in that area, or, somewhere in other places in the Midwest, it's like, maybe you got to go over to Chicago, or maybe you have to go, farther out west. So with that, and as you mentioned, it wasn't the most popular sport where you're from. Kind of, can you talk to us a little bit about how you forged your own path with the sport?
Yeah, you said the word proximity, and that's the word that I've been using a lot because that's the best. Like, literally, the closer you are to it, the more realistic it seems. And
Mm.
yeah, and you also mentioned like the number of pro clubs that you can, like, as a little kid, look at and see yourself there. Like, for example, I live in Portland now, and I just lived in Seattle a couple months ago. There's, millions of people between those two cities, and there's a total of what, four like legitimate professional clubs you can play for. Well, two in each club, in the Timbers and the Sounders.
Mhm.
You can play for the first team, you can play for the USL team, or if they're even still in the USL. I don't know. It's hard to keep track of the whole pyramid at the moment, but you know
Yeah.
what I'm saying. It's like that's all you have is those two. like big teams, those big clubs, whereas elsewhere you've got like all these little teams that have the potential of being big, or like depending on how they're performing. So um, the big thing for me for getting out of Montana was my mom actually, she could tell that it was much more than just like like a childish dream. She could tell that I was really in love with the sport. Really, that was my path that I wanted to pursue. So she looked at options to get me out of Montana during high school, and one of the things that she came across was this pretty renowned academy in South America, in Bolivia actually, which is not the best footballing nation, but it used to be a really popular place for American players in the 80s and 90s before we really started to pick it up here. And it's called the
Hmm.
Towichi Academy, and I went there for a year in high school and just got out of the got out of Montana, and then just got another picture of like what football is on the global stage. I played with kids
Yeah.
who were just like just desperate to play professionally, desperate to like make some money and support their families, etc. That was their only mission in life, and that again, like everything seemed closer after that. It was like, okay, I've been in a very serious footballing environment, and like you said, that even so, like I went back to Montana for one more year of high school after that, but even after that, I was like, everything seems closer now. Like it all
Hmm.
seems much more attainable. Then came the process of going to college, which kind of like beat me down again because it wasn't that was not the most encouraging situation. I didn't get a lot of offers or anything. But yeah, definitely, like you said, the closer you can get and the like closer up you can see it, the easier it becomes to believe, and that's such an important thing for young players to be able to see where they want to end up, and not from like a super far distance.
Yeah. So how much does that experience in Bolivia change your perspective on football? Because maybe, in Montana, you have in the clubs that you're playing for, the high school that you're playing for, you might be one of the best players, or, there's all the kind of this very similar culture around the sport. How much does it change your perspective to go to a place like Bolivia and just, see the game played a different way, see different cultures and all of that?
Oh, it changed everything for me because, like I said, I mean, it wasn't just like, it was also just like the culture of football where it's everywhere, even in a country like that. It's not, when you think of South American countries, they're not even close to the top, but they still have all the culture that surrounds it. That's their favorite. That's everyone plays it. That's like the main, like a huge part of their entire culture is football. So seeing that was as eye opening as the Manchester City game that I went to, and again, just like seeing like from the grassroots stage where kids are like like they dream about it from jump because it's right. They
Yeah.
see everything that's laid out ahead of them. They see the players from South America that go to Europe and play on those teams. It's all it's like you start to understand soccer much more than just like a sport in your high school or in your club. It's like it's
Yeah.
a global phenomenon, and there's like it's, I mean, if you look up to LeBron or Tom Brady or whatever in American sports, that's those are like elite level incredible athletes. But you have to think about like the fact that the soccer players that are in those positions, the Messis and Ronaldos and all the the players at the very top of the game, they're doing it in front of so many more people because it's it really is the world's game. So it's not just people,
Mhm.
and there's interest in NBA and NFL outside the US for sure, but not like soccer, not like the big European leagues, the Champions League. It's not. It's so much more of like a world thing. Like when you watch the Champions League
Yeah.
final or the World Cup final, one of these massive games. It's like you can feel it. You're watching it with the entire world. So it really just opened my mind to what football really was and its place in the world, not just like something that I enjoyed doing in Montana, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it absolutely does. I think it is. It is such a unique experience too, and you've obviously traveled to numerous other places, as we'll get to in your professional career, but it is such a unique experience to go and see these other cultures and immediately have this one thing that can connect all of these people in an instant, right? And like, even if you don't speak the language, whatever, and it becomes this unanimous kind of thing that everybody understands. And I think it's a really kind of powerful experience to have that, where you can go and connect with a culture in that way so quickly, because like you said, it is a global game. You're going to be hard pressed to find places in the world that don't really have some sort of understanding of the game of football. Whereas, you go to certain places and ask them about baseball, they're going to have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. So it's really true. And so then when you're in the United States again, as you now have this kind of vision, right, of what you're maybe going towards one day, still in the United States, it felt like at the time, and maybe you can speak to this even better than I can, but you couldn't really see where the path, like, how do I get there, right? I kind of know what I want to go to one day, but how do I get there as a player here? And you mentioned, like, you chose the college route, which is what a lot of players did at that time. But it was difficult for you, like what made it difficult for you, that process of trying to go and play collegiate soccer?
Yeah, I mean, and like you said, that's one path that a lot of kids take. It was always the expectation of my family that I would, keep studying. So, that was just the obvious route. But it then seemed like, just because I understood it, it didn't make the path any easier. And
Mm,
um, I had the toughest time getting recruited out of Montana. I sent letters everywhere. I didn't go to a lot of ID camps, which people, at that age will be familiar with. That's one thing you try to do, is like go to the camps that are hosted by the colleges you want to go to and stuff. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure I made some mistakes, but the number one place that I wanted to go was actually a junior college in Arizona that had like a really long track record of producing good players, and they just won the national championship, and even they didn't want me. So I didn't get recruited by a single school coming out of Montana, except for I went to one. I was a guest player on a club team in Oregon, and a coach saw me, a Division III coach. That was all I had in Spokane, Washington, and that's where I went for one semester. I lasted one semester there, and yeah, it was really discouraging. But the thing is, I never, I felt like the understanding that I had gained from Bolivia, and I was always confident in my abilities, but like I felt like the understanding, I was like, I know more about soccer than these guys that are, it's like that was my,
mm,
and not in an arrogant way. I just, like, that was my mindset, was like, I have something more than them just because I've seen it like they haven't, and
mm-hmm.
and from there, so I mean, I went to the Division III school, but my plan from there was even to go. I was like, well, I'm not going to stay here. I'm going to go Division 1, and I knew that I had to perform my freshman year for that to happen, and I did. I did well, and I did get the transfer to a Division 1 school. Um, but yeah, I wouldn't say that it was anything more, like, if I didn't have the experience in Bolivia, even if Bolivia didn't make me like a significantly better player, which it did, but even if it hadn't, it was much more just like the experience of seeing that football, like opening my mind to it. It's like I just instantly felt like I had something that everybody else did not. So
Yeah.
that was, I think, like the catalyst for me, to like continue to believe that I was actually good enough to play at a higher level when nobody would recruit me, and nobody was like, "Hey, we want you to come play for us. We think you're good." Like, I didn't have any of that positive, like, reinforcement, like, "Hey, we think you're a good player," and I was like, "Aren't I a good player? I think I am. I'm not sure." So like, even with nobody
Yeah.
telling me that, like, the experience that I had, the knowledge, like, it still made me feel like I had something extra, which I turns out I really needed that. So yeah, but anyway, that's how that experience influenced that whole process for sure.
Yeah. I think that you struck on a really important chord there. Like, that's kind of the key to unlocking a lot in a professional soccer career, or just, even a collegiate soccer career, anywhere where you kind of want to go to the next level, is like that belief in yourself, right? Because sure, you might get some coaches or you might get some feedback that's telling you that it's positive, but for the vast majority of players that, you've spoken to, I've spoken to, you get a lot of no's and you get a lot of kind of quote unquote negative feedback, right? Where coaches are saying, yeah, we're not interested, or we don't think you can play at this level. So, I kind of teeter on the balance of like, is it confidence? Is it delusion? I don't know, but you have to have a little bit of a healthy kind of balance of that to understand, like, even if 10 coaches tell me that I'm not good enough to play at this level, I still have to believe in myself, because maybe coach number 11 is going to give me that chance. And it sounds like kind of your college experience was what maybe, just continue to ignite that flame that you had in yourself. Like, no, I don't care what people are saying. I know that I can play at this level.
Yeah, no, you nailed it. And I think it might have actually been legitimately 10 important coaches to me that said no before the one said yes, because
Mm,
I had a really good season at Whitworth University, it was called, my freshman semester. Um, and that, to be honest, the coach that coached me there continues to be the best soccer coach that I've ever had in the U.S. He was legit. I mean, and he has that reputation. Everyone knows who he is. He's at a prep school in Minnesota now because he loves to teach as well. So he's a teacher, and also for a big prep school in Minnesota, it's called Shattuck St. Mary's. But
mm,
yeah, it was incredible to have like that. That coach really was such an important factor for me, and he wanted me to stay, obviously. But I told him, I was like, I really want to see what I can do at higher level, and so he was supportive of that. So fortunately, for like in the middle of that, of my like process of becoming a professional, I had this one coach that was really important, and I trusted his word. And he said, like, you are a talented player. You need to keep working, etc. And he gave me so many good like little tidbits of advice and everything. But then, so he helped me get onto Oregon State University, and I was so excited for that. Such a big conference, like they had this one player that I was so excited to play with. He had just won Pac-10 Freshman of the Year, and he was this kid that had come over from Congo, and was just incredible. And so I got to play with him my 1 year at Oregon State, and he ended up getting drafted number 1 overall. And it was just the coolest
wow.
experience to play with him. And he was such a good guy and incredible player. So um, unfortunately, once I got to Oregon State, the coach that had brought me there was let go, and a new coach came in. So I had to play the whole season under this new coach that really didn't have much of an interest in me, just some kid from Montana that transferred from a Division III school. Um, so I had to transfer again. He cut me from the team. And so I
Wow.
was like, well, back to square one, kind of, again, I'm totally not sure what to do. And um, I wanted to stay at Division I because I felt like I had a lot of unfinished business with that. So the only option that became available to me was to go to Marshall University in West Virginia. So that's where I went. And once again, I played 2 whole years there, and really just kind of like, not incredible, um, like performing, just nothing. It didn't really like pan out for me there. I played not even a ton, and it turned out okay. But again, like no real like enforcement. I wasn't like, nobody was saying like, oh, you're a great player, like you can, etc. It was just kind of like up to me, like you said, teetering on that line of like arrogance, or like, of just like self
Mm,
belief. And like, are you like, of course, all the time you're like, maybe I'm not, anything special. And even one of the assistant coach at Marshall, he he was a really great guy from France, and he had a really honest conversation with me one time when I was like expressing my frustration of not playing and stuff. And he said, "We're saying all the same stuff about you as your coach at Oregon State. So are we wrong, or is this just a conspiracy against Eddy Prugh?" And I was like, "Oh, it's legit. Maybe I am really not the player that I believe myself to be." But again, it just kept self belief. And so after that is where I kind of got my opportunity to turn pro. But no, like you said, I'm sorry, I just rambled forever about what you said, but it's totally right. You gotta like keep yourself like uh, reality, like what yourself to be capable of. You got to keep that alive, even in the face of like,
yeah.
really like, even when it makes perfect sense. Like this coach had said to me, it's like, yeah, it could be very likely that I'm just totally not the player that I believe myself to be. But you just got to keep it alive if you believe in it. So yeah, you nailed it though. Exactly what you said. Yeah.
So take me to that kind of moment where you're in Oregon State, right? And you've had that season at Whitworth, and you've now gained this opportunity for yourself that you're so excited about. It's the Division I level. It's the high Division I level as well. Obviously, things happen with coaching changes, as we know, and then it just doesn't work out in your favor. Like, what is it like to then have that conversation with that coach where he says, no, we're not interested, and like, what's even going through your mind, to kind of sitting in that office, or immediately after that?
Yeah, well, I mean, you can tell that you've been in all these situations, maybe not the exact ones, but you're asking the right questions because it's like, yeah, those are like the really intense moments and like moments that I'll never forget. But I do remember like everyone has their year-end meeting, and I remember everything about it. I remember what I was wearing. I remember what they were wearing. I remember that they took like a little
Yep.
bathroom break in between the meeting before mine and mine, and I was just sweating like the whole time. And um, yeah, that after he told me, he's like, we're just not interested in you here, etc. I was just like, because I mean, I didn't play a lot at Oregon State, but I had the support of all the team. Like everyone, was really like, this kid can play. He's a nice kid. Like even Danny, that was the thing. Danny Mwanga, this guy that ended up going number 1 in the draft, he told me at the very end of the season,
Yeah.
after it all, he was like, "Man, I wish you were on the field more." Like, because I would always, try to find him and find him in ways that um, as like somebody who had seen the game like he had from that perspective. Like I felt like we knew, like we were on the same wavelength. Like, hey, you've been in Africa, I was in South America. Like I know, like I'm on your wavelength, even though I'm not of like nearly have the same ability as him. Like we still had sort of an understanding of like of the game from a different perspective, and we would talk about
Mm.
players and teams in Europe constantly. But even he was like, I wish you were on the field more, and little stuff like that. I was like, okay, so these guys know what, or they see what I see,
Yeah.
and the coach didn't. But anyway, so the coach, he told me they weren't interested, and I was just like out of my body, with just like kind of just on disbelief. I was like, what do I do now? Oh my gosh, you got to be kidding me, just like, yeah, like those moments that really define you as you get older. But I remember it, and just like you said, like I was just in total like shock, and I was like, all right, back to square one. Like, where can I go now? Do I have to go back to Whitworth? What does this mean? Like, it was all sorts of
Yeah.
all those questions, and I was fortunate to find this situation in West Virginia that it didn't turn out perfectly for me. I didn't, but the people that I met, the experiences, um, unreal. It turned out to be the perfect place for me to be. Also cool to experience yet another like just insanely different culture living in West Virginia in Appalachia. It's
Mm.
something I never fathomed I would do. And yeah, so I mean, it worked out that I got to play at another school at Division I level, but it didn't give me a ton of like of that positive reinforcement. So once again, I was just trying to convince myself that I wasn't who these coaches thought I was, who they thought I was. I had to stay true to what I knew.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. And see, this is what I think is sometimes tough about college soccer, and especially at this time, right, where we talked about it, kind of seemed like that was the route if you wanted to go pro, right? Like the most of the guys that you saw going professional in the United States, it was they went to a big name college, they performed at a high level, and then they got drafted. And sometimes, as we can say, even with professional careers, right, it might take a guy a couple of years to actually really find his footing at the professional level, and then he can go on to succeed after that. We see all sorts of players now in the professional ranks that really hit their stride 25, 26, 20, into
Hmm.
their early 30s,
Yep.
right? It's not always you're a flash in the pan at 18 and then you're a superstar for the next decade. And the same is true with a college career, right, where it's this short 4-year window. Maybe something happens like what happened with you at Oregon State, coaching change. Okay, now like that's a year, right?
Right.
Or an injury or something like that. Or even if you just haven't really figured out who exactly you are as a player yet over the course of that 4 years, it's not to say that you're then done as a footballer once you graduate across that stage. But in a way, it kind of makes so many players feel like that because they're like,
Hmm.
I played at a good level, but I didn't get a ton of minutes, or I had that bad season and there's not a lot of interest for me. So, like, you have maybe a college career that you look back on, and there's so many highs and lows from it personally, but from a playing perspective, you didn't feel like you had the best resume to go out to these pro clubs and say, like, yeah, look at what I just did. You should come and sign me. So, like, your mindset going into the pro game then, like, what are you kind of thinking about of how I'm going to go and attack this dream?
No, great. Again, all the questions to ask, man, and like quick point with what you said about going to college and stuff. It's like it's such
Mm.
it's so much different in Europe, where if you want to be a footballer, you stay in the academies, like you work, you get your whatever level of education it is, but that you can always go to school later, and that school and sport are not
Yeah.
like intertwined, so I wish more players would do that now in the US. It just seems like it's such a worry to like lose your eligibility, when it's like, well,
Mm.
you know, that's a whole other debate. If like the level, like what path like we should use to develop our players in the U.S. Education
Mm.
is obviously important, but I don't think it needs to be necessarily intertwined with soccer in particular. I mean, like college football and stuff, that's a
Yeah.
different story. But anyway, yeah, so coming out of that experience, like you said, it's not, like I didn't have like any of the understanding or any of that to approach clubs or to figure out how to play at the next level. All I had was this connection in Portland with the Portland Timbers of one of the coaches that was their PDL coach. um, he knew me from my freshman year at Whitworth. We played a team in Oregon that
Mm.
he was a coach of, so it was a weird connection like that. Looking back, it's like there's so many little like things that are like just line up perfectly. It all almost seems scripted. It's like, oh, you went to Whitworth to make this connection, because without this connection, I nothing would have happened for me at all. Um, but anyway, and also side note, when I was at Oregon State, I had tried out for this PDL team, this summer league team. PDL is what it was called back then. I don't know what I can't remember what it's called now, but and I had done very well, so he remembered me. And anyway, so all I had was this connection, and he allowed me to come and train with the PDL with the under 23 team. That when I graduated, without getting drafted, without any like real prospects, he allowed me to just come back to the Timbers, and for that I'm so grateful. And I had this long stretch of time where I got to train with them before going to a combine. So I didn't approach any clubs. I don't know if you're probably familiar with the combine process,
Yep.
and yeah, I mean those are a good path to take. I think it worked out for me. It was legit. Um, but yeah, I just went to combines after training with the Timbers for a little while, and I got very fortunate.
So what type of combines were you going to? Was it like the kind of private companies that host it where they'll bring, a handful of scouts or coaches to come and watch, or was this more like specific teams were hosting combines, just kind of for their club?
It was the first one. Yeah, it was a combine through a company. I'll shout them out because they helped me. PSC Pro Soccer Consulting, and
Hmm.
yeah, it was good. It was like I had to travel to wherever they were hosting it, and it was well organized. They had several coaches of like at the level that they feel would be like a mutual benefit for them to be to see these level of players. And it took me two of them, actually, two combines with the same coach. And by the second one, they had PSC had let me know that there was a coach that was interested. So I was just like, holy shit, this could be like actually happening, like it's, it was like
Yeah.
final, and after the second one, he like just pulled me aside and was like, we had a great relationship from the start, and we still do. Still, I just messaged him the other day, congratulating him on their season. But yeah, it worked out just kind of fairy tale-ish like that. But yeah, so that compound route is what I went for, and it worked out for me.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So what was that first opportunity that you got out of that combine? Where was the club and the team?
It was Boden's BK, and they were in the north of Sweden, in the Swedish second division, which is technically the fourth division. It's called Division Two, but there's
Hmm.
Allsvenskan, Superettan, Division One, and then Division Two. So it was very far in the north of Sweden, which wasn't so painful for me being from Montana, but yeah, it
Yeah.
was another total culture shock that was beautiful and exciting, and yeah, very lucky with that.
I think this is another kind of unique, like we were speaking about right in the beginning. This is another kind of unique thing about this, particular career path, right? Where, a lot of people see professional athletes and it's like, okay, they have so much kind of autonomy. They have so much money. They have so much this, they have so much that. They live in these beautiful places. Um, and I wonder for you was that kind of period in your life where you're looking for that first opportunity? Is it like, whoever calls me and says, "Hey, do you want to come and play for me? Do you want to sign a contract?" You're like, "All right, where are they on the map? Cool, let's do it." Like, for I know it was kind of like that for me. My first opportunity was Germany, so I had a little bit of a concept of kind of that, but I've heard a lot stories of lots of guys like, okay, my first opportunity is in Slovenia. I don't know anything about Slovenia, but book me a ticket and I'm on my way. Like, was that kind of your mindset as well?
100%. You can, once again, like you can tell you've been there, because that's exactly what it's like. And to me, like it was even more legit than I like could have anticipated. I was like, just let me start anywhere. I don't care. Like, but this place, I mean,
Mm,
they had a beautiful stadium. They had decent support. Everyone knew like the club and the community, and it was a small town, but I was just like, no, I was so excited for it. They had like cool press and everything, so it really like it made me
mm,
feel like more professional than I had anticipated, like for a first opportunity. And I ended up staying for 3 seasons, and it was such an awesome experience, that club. But yeah, no, it could have been anywhere, like you said. You just want
yeah.
like I was like, I'll play for free meals and a place to stay. That's, at first, which I'm sure
Yep.
is the mindset of so many of us, man. But that's, yeah, it could have been anywhere. Totally. I would have gone. Let's go. Antarctica. Like
Yeah.
first league in Antarctica. Yeah, it didn't matter. I was on the plane for sure.
Yeah. So take me through kind of some of those first couple of seasons, right? Was there a period in the beginning where it kind of you had to adjust a little bit to Swedish football and adjust to the team, or did you kind of go right in and have some success right away, and that then was the catalyst for the next couple of seasons? Like, I know some players they kind of struggle at first when it's that first jump to pro football. It's kind of like,
Hmm.
whoa, okay, let me get my sea legs here. What was that like for you?
It was actually a pretty smooth transition for me, because I think the
Mm,
type of football they played was really like what I had always wanted to play, which was like not it was more like thoughtful than a lot of American soccer, but it wasn't like any sort of like beautiful crisp like Spanish style
mm,
football. It was like it was more physical. It was cold. It was in the north of Sweden, so there was like like always kind of like a like more of a like an influence of hockey as well, as weird as that is to sound. Like everyone plays
yeah.
hockey up there. Like that's almost as it's probably par and par with how popular football is in Sweden. And so I feel like the more north you go, the more like kind of like attitude or whatever there is to like this is a physical game too. It's not just like it's nice. It's football. You keep it on the ground as best you can. We try to play. That's what everyone respects, of course. But it's like it's also like you have to like kind of everyone like if it's Swedish people, they'll probably like tell you you have to kind of like prove yourself more, being more north, being further away from Stockholm.
Mm,
So no, it suited me too, because I had played hockey, and I like what I lack in technique and like skill, I would definitely make up for with intelligence, with using my body and my physicality. So it suited me. I liked it. It was good. And I remember the very first game I played was a preseason game in Finland, indoors, because it was like I mean, it was -20 or whatever outside at that time.
yeah.
um, and oh man, I just got dominated by. It was a really good Finnish team that went on to win the league, that the top league in Finland that year. But I just remember like just got dominated from set pieces, like in a lot of open play stuff too. But I was like, oh man, this is going to be a rough start. But then I got it. As this preseason went on, I got better and better. Played outside on bigger fields, and yeah, I just worked really hard because I was so thankful to be there. I was just like constantly just like working as hard as possible, which everyone saw as well. And
Mhm.
so yeah, it suited me after a quick time, but there was a rude introduction for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, that work ethic that you spoke about, can you speak to a little bit like what's kind of your day to day like as a as a foreigner that's living in Sweden and playing for this club? What's kind of your schedule from a day to day basis? Like I'm sure you've got training obviously each day and then matches on the weekend, but are you also going and doing individual work on your own? Like are you in the gym on your own? What are some of the other things? Because I know I can speak to this, but maybe other people don't quite know that. Like sometimes the actual day of a professional footballer is like this very short window of time. And it's like, what are you going to do with all that other time?
Exactly. Yeah. And I found a lot of ways to fill that time, but I was definitely in the gym. Not always like there to work super hard, but just to be in the environment of athletics and performance, just surround yourself with that, dress for that,
Hmm.
like just be in like the persona of, an athlete. So yeah, sometimes I'd just be there like drinking coffee with people in the lounge area. But I was there to work as well, and I would probably, I can't remember my exact regiment that I was going through, but I definitely put in the work in the gym, and that was that was also huge. I mean, at that point, it's like whatever you can do with that free time to make sure that you stay at that level or go higher. It's how you, I guess, fill that time that's going to determine that. And yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I would take little classes, I would do all sorts of stuff, but yeah, it's definitely trying to improve my everything about like, what I could control in that downtime for sure.
Yeah. And so then as you have that, like, obviously as you mentioned, you've stayed there for a couple of years and it's like you're having success kind of at this club. Is there ever, a thought in your mind of like, okay, I've kind of had success here. Let me see maybe if there's opportunity for me to go higher or maybe to go to, another league at the next level? Or is the mindset like, I've got a club that took a chance on me and they've given me a professional opportunity. I can stay a professional here. So let me kind of continue to build my career from that perspective. Like what's kind of your mentality going through the pro game that way?
Yeah, another good question because there is for a little while it's like, okay, this is a situation. They like me here. Like I probably should stay. I should probably like, take what I can get, take what I have. And for the first season, I don't think that was a problem. I don't think there was much interest from elsewhere. But they really wanted me back. And they paid me more the second year. They gave, it was definitely more of like I'd proved myself and I deserved to stay, to a level where I even got to say like a little bit of what I wanted to stay. And so
Hmm.
at that point, I took what I had, and then the same thing the next year. The second year I turned much more attacking. I was a midfielder, central midfielder, and I I was put in a much more attacking role by the new coach that we got, an English coach, and he really transformed who I was as a player. And like I started scoring goals like I never had, like unless I was playing striker at a younger age. Like I never had scored goals from midfield like I had under this coach. And after that, then there was some interest, but again, I felt like I was in the community at that point. I was known by a lot of people because I was out there like trying to speak Swedish, which they really appreciate,
Yeah.
and just like being in the community, and they really wanted me to stay, and I was like, I love it up here. Like, I stayed one more year, and so yeah, I mean, 3 years is a long time to stay in the same place in Sweden, and I will forever like love that town and that club and everyone there. And yeah, but after 3 years, I was like, okay, I went pro at a very like late age. I'm getting older. Like, let me try something else. So then at that
Hmm.
point, I did want to move on and find a new opportunity. And there was interest from a USL team. And that's what I ended up doing, is coming back to the US to Colorado for a season. And yeah, with the Colorado Springs Switchbacks.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely want to talk about that experience for you, but I was curious to see what your thoughts are on how like how important is it for a player, as you mentioned, like you're trying to learn Swedish and you're actually trying to more so ingrain yourself in the culture of Sweden, then, I think some players sometimes look at it as like, I'm an American or I'm an English player and I'm going to Sweden like for my job and then I go back, right? Like
Hmm.
I'm not gonna
Right.
necessarily learn the language, learn the culture that much. I'm here to play football and my football will speak for itself. And obviously that's important, right? At the end of the day, it's great if you can speak Swedish, but if you can't perform on the field, not many of the fans are going to care. But how much is that, would you say, an important piece to actually kind of be like, no, I'm here and I want to be a part of the culture?
Yeah, that's a really good point because a lot of players do treat it like that. They miss America a lot. They're like, they like that they're playing soccer and stuff, but they're like, oh, I'm not in my home country. I'm, like, I can't wait to go home or whatever. Like, and then come back for my job. Like you said, I was just
Yeah.
really excited to be in another country and like doing something like that again. Because I had spent time in Bolivia earlier on in my career, and I was just like a new country. Like this is so like what a pleasure. And luckily, I mean, it's and not just that, it's a great country. It's not like there's nothing dangerous at all about
Yeah.
Sweden. It's not. People are so friendly, like, or well, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say they're like openly friendly, but they're very polite if you speak to, but like,
Yeah.
it's not like a super outgoing culture, but it was beautiful, and I made like yeah such lasting relationships because I didn't feel out of place at all. I wanted to just immerse myself in a culture, and it was easy to do that because they were so like welcoming and stuff. So I think that was really important, not just to do, but like that eventually was one of the reasons they really wanted to keep me is because,
Yeah.
yeah, it was like, nah, this guy's in our culture. He's here, he's there. It's like, he knows all these people, etc. It's so I think that was actually played a pretty like serious role in that.
Yeah, yeah, because I think it makes it's like you said, it makes you that much. You're seen that much more as a part of the group instead of like the foreigner, right, or the outsider. Like
Right.
the quicker that you can kind of make that transition and just like, oh no, he's just another one of the guys. He's another one of the
Mm.
players. It makes it that much easier for a coaching staff to not necessarily view you as any differently. So I think it's important, but obviously when you come over to Colorado and now you're back in your home country, like what was that like to kind of have that homecoming and then be able to play at that level?
It was awesome, and like it's funny how like so many times a lot of things like came full circle for me. And so coming back to the
Mm,
U.S. And in particular Colorado because that was like the infamous like destination being from Montana when I was like growing up playing club. It was like to come to Colorado and get whooped like 10-0, we're like consistently. Never did we leave
yeah,
Montana and go to Colorado and like do anything well or do any like have any good results or anything. So I was like really excited for that. It was cool. It was like, oh man, I'm coming back to Colorado in a totally different way now. And the season was it was okay. There was a lot of weird drama that like really didn't have anything to do with any of the play. Like I don't know, just like unfortunate things that like didn't that ended up playing a
mhm,
role but really didn't have to. Um, and so like once again, I met. This was like culturally probably the most diverse team. We had players from Jamaica, Canada, Senegal, England, Honduras, Mexico, uh, Australian. I can't remember. Maybe a couple other places, but that was a blast to
wow,
find. And I'd played with really diverse teams in Sweden as well. We had a lot of players from elsewhere in Europe and Africa as well. But South Korea and Colorado as well. But it
wow.
was just such an interesting season, and yeah, it was a different type of football again, and I mean it was okay, but yeah, nothing that I like was like so excited to continue doing. So from there, I went back to Sweden to a different club for one more year. But yeah, Colorado was okay. Yeah.
Hmm. And is it kind of a new experience now for you? I have to imagine it is. When you're first coming out of college, like you said, you're just like, I need any opportunity, right? And you got it through your combine. But now, like going to Colorado, and then also your time, maybe we can speak to when you go back to Sweden. Now it's kind of a little bit nicer of experience, I have to imagine, a little bit, where you have connections and you have people that can actually make things happen for you a little bit, and it's not quite the same level of I just need to take any opportunity that's thrown my way, or maybe you can speak to it better than I can.
No, it is I mean, there weren't teams like fighting for me, but there were like, options. It was like I finally had reached a level where I had proven myself
Yeah,
and, like maybe there are some options here. So yeah, that was a new experience, and it was also nice. It made me feel like at this point, to be honest, like I was actually thinking about doing something else. I loved every second of it, but I was even like considering something else. So to have the option and not being like, desperately fighting for a place to play, was
hmm,
very like relieving and nice. I felt like I'd kind of like finally earned a position of like some whatever, some value. Yeah.
yeah. And is there ever a thought that crosses your mind of like that conversation maybe that you had with the assistant coach at Marshall or Oregon State, where you're kind of questioning yourself a little bit and that little bit of doubt where you're like, am I good enough? And then all of a sudden now fast forward and it's like, I was right. I'm a professional player. And not only that, I have professional coaches that are saying, no, I want him to come and play for my club. Like, has that ever crossed your mind at all? Or is it more so just like I've done this for myself and let's leave that in the past?
Yeah, at this point, no, it didn't. Like at one point when I got cut from Oregon State in particular, I was, as angry as I've ever been. I was like, I've got to show them that they're wrong, like you got to,
Yeah.
like I was just so angry and like had such a chip on my shoulder. And then I guess same thing a little bit at Marshall where, I had that conversation with the assistant, but at the end of the day, like, I don't feel like even that sometimes they were probably right about their decisions and it just wasn't a fit at the time. And as well as anyone probably that like, how well you perform and like where you are is a lot of just like how well you suit the club and the club suits you and the situation and the team and stuff, It's like, I mean, you see that at the highest levels, even where there's like, like world class players just can't get it right at like a certain club, and then they have to go back to a different club. And once they're there, they're just perform like they're back to themselves. So I don't know. I mean,
Hmm.
I felt like I was wronged a few times, but I never want to look back and be like, oh, yeah, I showed you or anything like that. It's like,
Yeah.
whatever. They're doing well in their careers. I had a good run, and the most important thing was that I like proved it to myself. I was like all the stuff that
Yeah.
you imagined you could be, to one degree accomplished that. So that's the most important, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I think it makes a much more positive relationship with that kind of success and that achievement, where it's not stemmed from the fact of like the kind of a negative place where it's like I'm trying to prove all these people and I have all these doubters that are fueling my fire. It's like it comes from a place of like, no, this is what I want to do and I just want to be able to achieve this for me because this is what my goal is. I think it creates a healthier relationship with that success and with that achievement. And so then is that season at Sweden, what's that like for you to kind of be before it thinking, I'm not sure. Do I want to keep playing? Do I not want to keep playing? And then go into that last season in Sweden. Was it kind of like the perfect sunset for you, or was it? Describe to me some of the emotions in that season.
Perfectly. Just like you said, it was like at the start, at the at the beginning of the season, I knew that it would be my last. I was like, I don't really want to coach after this. I want to always like, be around the game and support Manchester City till death for sure. But like, that's not,
Hmm.
I just don't see myself like, staying with the game any longer than the playing part at the moment, at least. And so yeah, I was like, I got to go back to Sweden to a different team that was pretty close to the team that I'd played for previously. This was called Skellefteå FF. And yeah, it was like you said, a perfect sunset because it was like going back to Sweden, speaking Swedish, like being around that culture again. That was super special, and I really, really enjoyed my teammates and the coaches that I had there in one final season. And yeah, then I knew it was done, and it was really like even for us, like I was talking to a teammate that I had in Sweden recently, actually, and I was telling him, and he's just now retiring, and he was asking me like,
Mm.
what do you do to fill the void afterward? And I was like, you just like find other stuff, man. You read more books. I don't know. You find out something you're interested in. Excuse me. And so I was like, it's not any easier for us than it is just because, like, LeBron or whoever is going to have to do it, and they've had such a more incredible career. Like Ronaldo's probably coming close to it at some point. He's not done yet, but like, imagine what it's like for a guy like that. But at the end of the day,
Yeah.
like the love that we had for the game is the exact same. So we're different people, but it's like it's the same bittersweet feeling. But um, at the end of the day, like I had accomplished what I think I had set out to do. So it was, yeah, it was intense, but also kind of like exciting too.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think retiring from sports is kind of like a really just. I use the word unique again. I know I've used it a lot this episode, but it's unlike anything else, right? Because when you retire from a traditional career, maybe some people just travel or, they do kind of, they don't necessarily then have to find a new thing to, as you mentioned, kind of fill that void or find a new passion project, so to speak, right? But like when you retire, quote unquote, from something in your early 30s, it's like, okay, well, what am I just gonna like just kind of travel and putz around and do what I guess the traditional retired people do. It's not quite the same thing, right? And whether that's you have all the money like LeBron or you don't, and you actually okay, I need to do things to still support myself financially. Is that like something that you kind of think about of like how you now kind of have this totally new chapter that's different from what you've done before? As I know you mentioned, a lot of players will just kind of seamlessly go right into coaching, and that's for some of them that might be what they really love. I think for some, honestly, they get into coaching because it's like that's all they really know is the game, right? And coaching is the next closest thing to that. But you obviously, you chose that path of like I'm ready to go and I'm ready to go and do something different.
Yeah, and I mean, once again, man, this entire conversation you've had, like, you know exactly what to ask because you've experienced it and are experiencing it too, and it is exciting. It's like it was really exciting because I never got like really great grades or anything, honestly, but I always thought that I was reasonably like intelligent in certain ways and stuff, and I was like, let's see what I can do out there. I hadn't even really given it like a ton of consideration other than like I really enjoyed writing creatively and professionally. So that's ultimately what I do now. But like it was a long path to get there and find and even like identify what exactly I wanted to do. And yeah, I mean it's times of it were really painful, like getting into the working world and being
Yeah.
like, dang, this is not where I want to be right now. I'd rather be on a field somewhere. But ultimately, you just power through, and it's like it's a whole new adventure and a whole like fun thing, and you'll surprise yourself all over again, like you didn't even know you could do, like without playing the sport that was all that you knew. So it's exciting, man. It's cool, and it's definitely comforting in a lot of ways to have like a steady income and all that stuff and just like kind of setting new goals and new projects for yourself. So it's exciting. It's all good. Yeah.
Yeah. What has the writing process been like for you? I know you mentioned that that's something that you really enjoy, and that's kind of a passion that you've dived into a little bit post playing. I think I read that you've written two books now to date, or do I have
Yeah,
that
you got
right?
that right. I mean, yeah, one of them was a children's book that I didn't, and then I had somebody illustrated, so that I don't even know if I consider that. I mean, yeah, that's something that I focused on and got completed, but that was much less of a project. Then I wrote one fiction novel, um, and I continue to do that as my passion. But professionally, then I'm a copywriter for a marketing agency now. So different type of
Mm,
writing, but it's all tied together. One thing helps me with the other, and that's my focus. But um, yeah, like you said, I mean that's a matter of like finding something else that you like to do and are passionate about outside of like nothing will ever replace. being able to play and compete, you know. It's not like you can go into work at a
Yeah.
time and like go into a 50-50 challenge and then like, you know, celebrate it. You know what I mean? It's you can never
Yeah.
replicate it just like that, which is, you know, unfortunate because that's to me that's the ultimate expression is just like competing straight up and yeah, but it's cool in other ways and I mean, I haven't had like great success with either of those books. I'm sure they're very like, you know, they were my first attempt at both of them. So, um, I'm proud that I got them complete, but now it's just a matter of doing it again. You know, I'm probably going to get said no to in that realm 10 times before I get that one that says yes, just like soccer. So, yeah, that's my new venture and, just, you know, trying to apply the same principles to this one, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So is that something that you kind of foresee that you would really love to do is continue to write kind of whether it be novels or whatever your passion kind of leads you towards writing? Because I think it's important, like you said, maybe you can also speak to this as well. Like what are some of the things that you take away from your soccer career that you've learned that are really maybe differentiate you when it comes to being in the workforce and compared to some of your other fellow employees? Because like you said, you're used to rejection, you're used to people saying, no, we're not really interested, and that's not something that phases you quite the same as it might for, you know, the person who's just worked in marketing or just worked in the business world for their entire career.
Yeah, 100%, man. Like, and I do, my new thing is writing, and that's what I'm gonna like pursue, professionally and, like as my passion projects, you know? And I mean, even getting to, the job that I have now, as a copywriter with no like that was I experienced that all over again. It took me 3 years to get here, and I definitely got said no to hundreds of times for sure with all the job applications and all like this and that and like just trying to get to a place where you can like you know have like that affirmation that you can do it. So I mean yeah I've already like you definitely already have that resiliency and you have that that not like to be honest it's weird to say but you know how to lose, you know, like losing is a part of
Yeah.
sport period. Like it doesn't matter, like even if you're at the very top you've lost, you're gonna keep losing. Like you know you just got to make sure that like the win is like you know getting up from that loss and just doing it again, like improving your resume this way or doing something, you know, like just one thing after the other and just you know just keep going. And that's definitely something that I learned from playing soccer 100%. So there's a lot of life skills to carry over. And yeah, I mean anybody that's played knows it's like you're gonna like face those things in every facet of like anything that's worth going after. You're gonna face those exact things. So that's yeah, like you said, huge takeaway, and I still apply it to everything that I do now for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, because you experience that adversity on the on such a frequent scale, right? You experience it from a day-to-day basis, like you mentioned, with just the competitive nature of training and of games, right? That's what it is, adversity. The other team is physically trying to stop everything that you're trying to do, and oftentimes you're gonna fail. And then also, like you mentioned, kind of on the more macro scale of, okay, I'm trying to build a career here, and there's going to be a lot of no's. There's going to be a lot of adversity. So it's just like it constantly is almost desensitizing you to that level of failure and just picking yourself back up and going again.
Exactly, dude, 100%. And yeah, I feel like you know it's tough to get told no or to get cut from a team or to do what you know to like all those things, but you gotta experience them, and not even in sport, but like in everyone's gonna experience them. So to anybody, I guess, like like it's you're adding to your resume to your level of like of capacity to your capacity when you get told no and keep going in
Yeah.
anything. So I don't know if yeah if I want to tie it to just the normal world, like yeah, keep going. Everyone's getting knocked down, just keep getting up. It'll you know it'll be worth it in the end. So
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I appreciate you so much for taking some time and sharing your story. It was definitely a fun one. Definitely learned a lot. I think the audience will enjoy this one as well. If anyone wants to go and check out some of the work of the first ever professional player out of the state of Montana, where can they find some of your writing?
oh man, both of those little books that I wrote are on Amazon. I will be making edits to the novel. But if you wanted to check it out, it's on there. It's cheap, I think. It's like $15 or something. But anyway, yeah, no, I appreciate that shout out, and no, I appreciate this too, man. You really like knew how to find the details that are so like so like common and all this stuff. So I appreciate you.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate that. I definitely, like I said, I definitely enjoy doing these, and I think there's a lot of value to be had in sharing stories like yourself. So thank you very much.
Cool. Thanks, man.
Man, that was a fun one. Thank you to Eddy once again for sharing his story, taking time out of his day to share with all of you guys his professional career. I really appreciate it. I really learned a lot, and I'm grateful for him. I'm grateful to all of you out there who have continued to listen episode after episode. It really does mean the world to me. Again, as I mentioned last episode, if you want to continue to show your support, Instagram and TikTok, you can find more content from the episodes, from the shows, in the 11 pod on both of those platforms. In addition to that, patreon.com/in the 11 pod if you want to support the show even a little bit extra. That is very much appreciated by myself. More episodes to come, more content to come. I appreciate all you guys so much, and I'll catch you in the next one.